Bitcoin at all-time highs above 80,000 US dollars as Donald Trump wins the election in a landslide. We cover all this right now in the Collective Shift weekly recap, actionable insights, and a breakdown into the crypto market, all in under 30 minutes. Nick, quite the week, hey?
Yeah, it has to be probably one of the bigger weeks I've been involved in the crypto space, even bigger than when we had the Luna collapse, FTX collapse. We've had a lot going on during 2021 bull market, but yeah, this is probably one of the most action-packed weeks I've ever seen in the space, and lot to unpack here, Matt. So maybe we'll kick it off with a market update first.
Yeah, let's get into it. So bring up my screen here. We've just got green across the board on all cryptocurrencies essentially, and particularly the big three. As I get my screen up here, we got Bitcoin up at the time recording 30% over the past 30 days. It's up, and it's up nearly 20% in the past 7 days. ETH up 30%, and also Solana up 30% in the past 7 days. Just notably there, we've got at rank number 6, Dogecoin has nearly doubled in the past 7 days. So of course, as we've been saying really the past few months, the biggest event in Q4 and the biggest variable for the crypto market was going to be the election, and that turned out to be the case. We got a surprising result in the sense of the extent of the victory. I think going into it, it was looking like Trump most likely was going to be the winner. So I guess the result isn't overly surprising. However, the margin absolutely was surprising, and you can tell the market was surprised. Why? Because of how quickly and sharply cryptocurrency prices have rocketed higher, which again just signals that the market was not anticipating this considerable margin that Donald Trump looks like he's won by. Have you got any extra details here, Nick, before we get into it?
No, I think you hit the nail on the head. It was all the margin of victory, and that was probably the biggest takeaway I had from the week was just how emphatic the victory was, and that's exactly why the markets rose as high as they did. A lot of people were expecting a really close count, but it was really anything but, and Polymarket I think moved to a 99% or 90% prediction rate very early on in the count, when I think Florida started getting going, and after that it was I think all signs from there, and Bitcoin pretty much started to increase in price as the polling came out and as the votes were being counted.
Yeah, it was quite a sight to behold. I don't think I'll remember that day. I don't think I'll forget that day for a very, very long time. And as I get up here, we've got Bitcoin even hitting all-time highs in terms of even inflation adjusted. So that was one of the final milestones it had to get, and that came over the weekend, I believe, or late last week. And we've got 82,000 here for Bitcoin, so we saw it keep ripping higher. Partially what helped the momentum as well, just to round out the market update, was the Federal Reserve. Amongst all that, they cut interest rates, which was expected, and that really is just a continuation after they cut rates in September for the first time in over 3 years. There's a bit of a coin toss on whether the Fed will actually cut rates again in December. But all of this, as we've been saying for these months, is coming to really assist cryptocurrency prices. Just to keep it simple, they prefer conditions that are lower interest rate environments, and the US economy going quite strongly overall. And overall, the inflation is not really as important of a factor now for the central bank. They are much more closely following the unemployment rate. So given the Federal Reserve has a dual mandate as a central bank, many central banks around the world just have one mandate, such as Australia's, but uniquely the US really looks after employment plus the inflation rate at the same time. So now we've got inflation back under control, but they're somewhat monitoring or very closely watching the unemployment rate, which is why we had another cut, even though the economy overall is going quite strongly. They're a bit shaky there, the labour market, it seems. So we'll keep an eye on that because that has big implications for crypto. But yes, let's get into unpacking what was a historic day for the globe, for the world, really. So many implications, but we'll try to keep it as strictly on crypto as we can, Nick. And let's just recap what actually happened.
Yeah, perhaps the best place to start is a high-level overview of exactly how conclusive the win was. So it looks like Trump and the Republicans might get what's called, I guess, a red sweep. which is taking control of both houses of Congress. So they've won the Senate already, and it looks like they're on the verge of clinching control of the House. I think they only need, five more seats to clinch that, and that would just mean that they have, I think it's been like 35 years or some grand amount that they've had this level of control over the White House and the Congress. So this just means that they'll be able to pass laws quicker. They'll be able to do a lot of the things that Trump promised, especially on his crypto agenda and his Bitcoin agenda. One thing that shocked me too was Trump looks like he's won the popular vote quite comfortably. That was actually being priced in at Polymarket at a 7% chance of Harris winning the popular vote. He only had a 30% chance days out from the election. And he's won that, getting about 50% of the total vote in the election, which was one of the big standouts for me in the election. And as we talked about in the lead up, hey, this has been some people wouldn't call it a landslide, but I would say it is in respect to what pollsters thought it was. A lot of pollsters were thinking that it was going to be a 50-50 split. A lot of people calling out it was a coin toss. It was going to be one of the closest election in recent memory, and it's really turned out to be anything but.
Yeah, another loss there for pollsters, as has been the case in recent, the last probably 2 or 3 elections, really. So a lot to be said there about how much we can rely on them moving forward. But I'm sure we'll all lean into the same traps again next time. But yeah, to unpack this even further, I think, a big thing I'll be watching this week is also, of course, the result of the House of Representatives. As you touched on there, Nick, I think if it does come out that the red sweep is confirmed, you could argue that prices may even rally a bit further, not as drastic as what we saw last week, but certainly that's something to watch over the coming days. And of course, Polymarket, just really taking over in terms of just global awareness last week, seeing different news and media outlets even referencing it, which you would never have even thought that may happen just 12 months ago. In terms of the implications, all right, so okay, great, we've got Trump, who has won the election. He won't actually be inaugurated until January the 20th. So a bit of time there to transition. But let's just start with, I guess, the first of many possible implications here. The end of Choke Point 2.0. For those unaware, Nick, what is sort of Choke Point 2.0 and why there's an end of that? Why does that matter for crypto?
Yeah, Choke Point 2.0 was building on, I think, Choke Point 1.0, which was, I think, a situation that Trump actually reversed, that tried to kind of cut off access to the traditional banking services for a bunch of fringe industries, whether it was gambling or marijuana use. Basically, the banks weren't banking them essentially, which cut them off from the traditional system. So we saw this happen in the crypto space, and it's been called and dubbed Choke Point 2.0. Basically, banks are disincentivized and actually we're told, it looks like from a lot of correspondence that is being leaked and coming out in the media now, to not bank crypto firms. So this is really difficult if you're a founder in the US. One of the biggest problems is you can't actually get a bank account if you're a crypto founder or creating a crypto business. So obviously this is a huge barrier to entry and a huge impediment to creating crypto services and launching your crypto product if you can't even get a bank account, or you're spending millions on thousands on lawsuits then, or maybe legal advice, and a lot of time to just get over such a basic thing. There was also, I think, 15% cap on, I think, how a bank can have a total representation of its crypto service. So you can't have more than 15% of crypto customers, essentially, if you're a bank. So this stopped a lot of banks like Silvergate to servicing crypto companies that just specialized in the crypto industry. So if this gets removed, it's going to mean that banks will be able to onboard crypto companies without these barriers. You're going to be able to get a bank account much easier if you're in the US. And all around, if you're a crypto company trying to raise money or trying to get through a lot of this red tape, a lot of it could be slashed, and it's going to make business a lot easier if you're a crypto founder in the US.
Yeah, that will have telling effects if Trump can deliver on his promises once he does come into office. Another implication here is the fact that, okay, not only has Trump won the election, who is seen to be very pro-crypto, but we've actually, in that process, we've actually got a result here, as I've got up on my screen, that a quote from Brian Armstrong, the CEO of Coinbase, that this is now, after the election, it's actually the most pro-crypto Congress ever. So what he's referencing there is just the amount of pro-crypto, even just neutral, politicians with a neutral outlook on crypto, or actually a pro-crypto outlook. There's a record number of them just scattered throughout both houses of Congress. And again, why does that matter? It's just now we have a situation where lawmakers are more informed about the ins and outs of crypto. They actually have a decent knowledge about how it works, and a lot of them are actually have a favorable outlook. So therefore, why does that matter for crypto prices or even the outlook for the industry? Is this, it's more likely we'll get sensible and fair regulation come through, which Trump has promised that he will push regulation through. So who better to do that than pro crypto candidates, which there's more detail there in a tweet we may link to below. But some really great work that had been done by Stand With Crypto, which was the largest single issue body in the whole election. So I might just say it again. Stand With Crypto is a body, sort of a policy body that's been created in the past few years by big entities in the crypto space, Coinbase being a big supporter of it. And Stand With Crypto was the largest single issue body affecting this election. So a lot of donations to different politicians, and it looks like that has affected the outcome here. So this was it's hard to sort of understate how important this implication is for the outlook for crypto.
Yeah, and as you said, there's just more crypto candidates, and especially in really important positions in government. So I think one was one of the head of, I think, the FDSA insurance as well. Like a lot of these heads of committees. There was one in Ohio, I think Bernie Moreno, who took charge, overcoming Cheryl Brown, who was one of the people who voted against SAB 121 to allow banks into the crypto space. So a lot of these people in high profile positions were really impacted, I think, by a lot of money flowing into the space. And as you said, 215 pro-crypto candidates out of 100 in the House of Representatives. This means pro-active crypto legislation might finally happen. I know it's been a long time coming, and it's one that I'm taking with a grain of salt in the last couple of months, just because it's been promised for a while now. But it's really hard to underestimate how important that's going to be once you have something like a stablecoin bill that gets passed next year, hopefully. That's probably the easiest one to do. And it just means that it's a no-brainer. US treasuries are being eaten up by stablecoin issuers, and it just allows US dollar dominance to flood the world. And why this took so long to get going, and I have no idea, because it's pro-America essentially, but they still didn't want to have it. We're going to see this definitely next year, as that's the easiest low-hanging fruit to get going, and this is only going to rapidly expand the stablecoin sector, which maybe we'll talk about. There was a few other key announcements this week that were probably missed by the market due to the election. Also, the market structure bill, that's just going to try to explain how or who governs the space, what's a crypto security, what's a commodity, is there any difference, is there going to be new laws, is it going to be updating existing laws, just going to provide an enormous amount of clarity that is stopping the crypto market from really going to that next level. As I said, if you're a founder in the US, a lot of them were moving abroad just because there wasn't any structure, there wasn't any clarity, and a lot were even talking about having to move if Harris were to win the election.
Yeah, great. Thanks for that summary there, Nick. Some other important implications. I think most relevant to, I suppose, Bitcoin's even short-term outlook, to be honest, is sort of the unknowns about what Trump will do with the reserve that the sort of US Marshals have at the moment, which is around 200,000 Bitcoin, so around 1% of the overall supply. So the US government essentially owns this because they've confiscated it previously in a lot of sort of asset seizures related to different crimes and whatnot. So presumably they will be selling that. That has been the case all of these years. But Trump, if you may remember, came out a few months ago and promised that the US will have some sort of reserve, and it was maybe a lot of people sort of drew a line between, hey, maybe that reserve will equal him just telling the US Marshals, hey, you're not allowed to sell that, which would be massive in terms of, I suppose, the liquid or circulating Bitcoin that's in the market, essentially removing that. And I guess the market will be watching closely to see, does Trump do anything additional to that? Does he not do anything at all, which is possible? He might actually run into some hurdles or obstacles in terms of actually telling the US Marshals what to do and what they cannot do. So that's something I'll be watching as well. I think the dream scenario is if he comes out and says the US government is going to start acquiring and purchasing Bitcoin. Like that would be like I guess anything's possible, but that would be the most bullish and really just like would accelerate Bitcoin, but unlikely it seems, but who knows with Trump. So that's another absolutely topical implication of what happened last week and why I guess crypto prices are soaring. Just quickly, Nick, like I know we've got like so many, we could talk hours about the implications of this. The one that I think is going to be relevant for markets absolutely is what happens at the SEC.
Yeah, this is the big one that a lot of people, actually this was one of the biggest cheer for Trump when he presented at Bitcoin 2024 a few months ago. He promised to fire Gary Gensler, who was the chair of the SEC. That got a bigger applause than not selling the Bitcoin. And he was living it up. So that was one of the highlights there. This is going to be the biggest one here, because if he replaces current Gary Gensler with someone who is more pro-crypto, there's been a couple of the SEC commissioners who have stepped up and provided alternative views of crypto and are very pro-crypto, then that's going to be a huge catalyst for enacting more proactive SEC guidance and action on crypto firms. If that's the case, we may see no action letters maybe handed into current court cases, or in cases such as Uniswap, who were issued, I think they were issued a Wells notice. Immutable were issued a Wells notice recently. Maybe those ones they won't go forth with anything, because we've been really waiting, especially in the Uniswap example. There's been crickets out there at the moment. If that's the case, we may see these coins, major exchanges catch a big bid here, because that's going to be a huge change in the market, because I think the SEC in the previously has probably been the most hostile we could have actually expected. It was probably worse than expected, actually. So that's going to be a huge shift. There's still a lack of clarity whether Trump can actually fire him legally, but it may not matter otherwise, as it looks like Gensler may step down. And then my interpretation is that would mean that they can act a more pro-crypto candidate there at the SEC to get 3 to 5 of the votes. Traditionally, Gensler, he was actually the tiebreaker. And whenever it went to tiebreak, he would vote against cryptocurrency laws and legislation, and was actively anti-crypto. So absolutely huge development at the SEC, and it's probably some of the most important impacts, I think, Matt.
Yeah, well said. I think Hester Peirce or that Mark Ueda, who we've also been talking about throughout this year on different podcasts, looking like the likely one of them is the next commissioners of the SEC, or potentially I think that Robinhood chief legal officer is also in the mix as well, which Robinhood, as we know, are a pro-crypto company as well. So yeah, we can, I suppose this does tie into devil's advocate or ways that, okay, everyone's celebrating the Trump victory, but I think it's important to put our bearish hat on in a case. I'll just look out for different dangers from that can come from external. One thing that is on my mind is whether SEC just goes like all guns blazing, goes down in a blaze of glory sort of thing, in terms of Gary Gensler, and with recklessly sort of going out and suing different crypto companies. That is something I've seen as like a potential downside for crypto in the short term. Like, I just don't think it's going to matter that much. If he does go out and be very harsh against crypto companies, it's possible he goes out and sues a lot. But I think the market can see through like his intentions there. And if he's very likely, like he almost certainly going to not be at the SEC after Trump gets in, then I don't think it's going to be that much of a bearish case.
The only other bearish point I can think of is the geopolitical risks that aren't probably as talked about. We've seen crypto sell off in a lot of these cases. That's something that maybe we're not pricing in potentially, especially if we consider how Trump's going to be doing a lot of tariffs, especially on China. I would no doubt think that China would want to retaliate against such extreme tariffs that could happen, because that's a real economic war that's going on and could accelerate under a Trump presidency when he gets inaugurated in Jan 20. That's going to be a massive one to watch out for. But at the end of the day, crypto and especially Bitcoin is moving in one direction. And as we talked about in our newsletter, the US had the highest deficit outside of the COVID era ever. And to be honest, that's only going to look to accelerate, especially as Trump is promising tax cuts but is not really clear where this is going to come from. And if anything, deficit's only going to continue to grow. Alternatively, we'll love to see how all these tariffs play out, as that could, really harm, I guess, consumers in the short term, especially if they go ahead with this, because it just means that consumers end up paying a higher price in the short term inside the US. But I think those devil's advocate, nice to talk about, but at the end of the day, it's 99% positive for the crypto space. It was the best ever outcome for cryptocurrency with a Trump win. There's either going to be other massive positive changes, such as SAB 121, that's going to be likely eliminated, which just means that banks will finally be allowed to custody cryptocurrency. So who knows, maybe end of next year, we may be living in a world where a JP Morgan or a big US bank will finally be allowed to take your Bitcoin and hold it for you, which I think is going to unlock a lot of user friction, especially for people who don't want to use crypto exchanges and just want to use their traditional banks.
Yeah, that's yet another one to watch. I think that SAB 121 is sort of rolled into certain bills from my understanding. So it's going to be yet another thing to pay attention to over the next sort of 6 to 12 months. And I think just getting up on my screen here as well, just the US government holdings, which given the price of Bitcoin has gone up so much, is now over $17 billion worth of Bitcoin that they do hold. Just quickly on DeFi, Nick, we saw that if you were to if anyone was to tell us that Trump was going to win the election very easily, I think we both would have said DeFi would be the thing that bounces the strongest, for reasons we probably even discussed, I think, even on this podcast or for members. And it did end up happening. Just the relief essentially from the market, and more so just the very bearish outlook for DeFi, which we've just talked about for a couple of years now, with the regulators in the US being very negative towards DeFi. That softens a bit with Trump coming into office. In terms of where DeFi goes from here, do you have any opinions on if that's just a bit of a relief and that's sort of it? Or
yeah, I think not only is it the regulation aspect, but it's that, hey, these DeFi tokens got called a lot of kind of a governance meme that had no value. It was just governance token, and that's why the tokens really struggled, because there was no real demand pressure from them, and there was no value accruing to the tokens themselves. So now we're going to get a Trump presidency. He's promised a lot of market structure bills, a lot more positive outlook for crypto companies and and just cryptocurrencies in general. I'm anticipating a shift towards these governance meme tokens, towards actually having true utility and value being attributed to them. So I think this would only mean that DeFi tokens would continue to soar higher, potentially beat the market then, if actually these things can be valued more in fundamentals and we can see actual revenue, actual utility driven to these DeFi tokens, because essentially they were disincentivized from doing so because they would be sued by Gary Gensler and the SEC if they actually provided value, which is so paradoxical. And that's probably one of the most positives I can see for DeFi, not just going to become a meme now, but potentially actually have value and more utility driven to them.
Yeah, thanks for that. On my screen here, seeing the DeFi performance, and in particular, Athena stands out there. I think they sort of jumped the gun. People are sort of speculating with Wintermute proposing the SENA token. So people who are staking the ENA token are potentially going to start getting fees distributed to them if that governance proposal is approved, which that came out coincidentally. I think it was planned. It would have been planned. It came out after Trump was nominated or Trump won the election. So we may see more of this sort of like DeFi stakeholders sort of thinking, okay, the risk is now a bit less. Like, let's go ahead with some more fee distribution proposals or other ways to drive value to these DeFi tokens, which have been battered so heavily. Okay, so again, as we said, we could talk about the implications for hours. I think the conclusion often always points to the same thing, and it's going to be an extremely exciting 12 months, or even the next 3 months, really, to see like how Trump goes about executing on his crypto promises, and the various sort of details within that. I suppose as a final takeaway, Nick, what would be your sort of summary of what has happened in the past week?
Yeah, so it would just be widely that, hey, this is the best possible outcome for the crypto space, but also too just sentiment. Mike Novogratz from Galaxy Digital come out and he had a really good kind of view of things. He said that he's just expecting one good piece of news every week now, for the foreseeable future. So this is just adds up when we consider how bad sentiment got in the last couple of years. It was a lot more negative news than positive news. Now we're going to start to see this completely reverse. So we're going to see, new pro-crypto not senators, but regulators and policy makers installed in key positions. That's going to continue to boost price. We may see SEC drop potential lawsuits against key industry players. That would boost prices. Anything to do with Bitcoin or, new laws that are coming up, that would presumably increase prices due to market clarity. So we're just going to see bit by bit, new news items hit the shelves each week, which should only continue to add towards the bullish sentiment in the space.
Thanks, Nick. You did just remind me of a nice little underrated thing that I'll mention at the end of this episode. So stay tuned, because we didn't get time on it to touch on it then. As we said, we could talk hours about the implications, but there's a nice little teaser that I'll give you some research to do for those watching and listening. Okay, but believe it or not, there was other news outside the election. Hard to believe, given how much attention and focus was on the election. But we did see a couple of news items come through here. The first one was a collaboration between some really stalwarts of the industry in Anchorage, Kraken, Robinhood, and Paxos, collaborating to launch what they're calling the global dollar. So it's a regulation-focused yield-bearing stablecoin. So once again, another win for stablecoins. We saw what was a historic acquisition in terms of dollar amount last month when Stripe acquired Bridge, and that was yet another sort of fueling this growth in stablecoins. This is yet another example, and if it wasn't already a big year for stablecoins, I think maybe 2025 could honestly be even bigger for them. So yeah, really exciting times there, and we've done a lot of content and material on it over the past few years for good reason. What else have you got here, Nick?
I just saw that Citigroup and Fidelity, they proposed an on-chain fund with real-time FX settlements. So this was a proof of concept, and it was part of the Monetary Authority of Singapore's Project Guardian, which also garnered, I think, a few headlines, which we may have spoken about last week, with Chainlink and Swift Network talking about new implementations and testing with tokenized assets. So a huge amount of activity going on in the institutional space when we're seeing these huge names, Citigroup, Fidelity, Anchorage, Kraken, Robinhood, Paxos, like these are huge names, and they're building, in the case of stablecoins, but now on-chain funds. So we're really excited for this one, and really keen to see if we see which public blockchains this could potentially be deployed to maybe next year. So one to watch for the year to come.
We did talk about recently those rumors that Revolut was gearing up for a stablecoin launch, and Robinhood, which is rumored, but they said they're a bit further off. I'm wondering if they maybe are going to accelerate their development plans now with the election result. But yeah, all things to watch. In terms of altcoin updates, once again, there was news coming out from different projects, a bit quieter on the actual announcement and product launches front for obvious reasons, but certainly on the adoption front, there were some talking points. So Solana had some really big milestones throughout the month, and even during the week, they also actually were the subject of another sort of spot ETF application. So Canary Capital throwing their hat in the ring. So that goes along with some other active spot ETF applications for Solana, which currently don't have any answer from the SEC. So I think widely expected that if there is going to be another ETF, like Solana is right up there as the next likely one. As we talked about before, you don't just need the regulatory sort of side of things, you also need the ETF issuers' interest or commercial interest in whether it's even profitable to have these ETFs. So I think people often don't pay enough attention to that second point, but Solana, there would absolutely be appetite for that. So yeah, keep an eye out for that. But in terms of the network activity on Solana, Nick, there were a few talking points now that the month of October, has come to an end.
Yeah, I saw that it ranked in about 150 million in fees in October, which was an all-time high. It actually started to flip Ethereum again for total fees. So that was a metric that we really like to pay attention to, because that's really high quality signal of why Solana is still so relevant in the market and why it's continuing to take market share away from Ethereum. Also saw that it had its highest ever active addresses in October of 120 million. So whether we talk about fees, active addresses, Solana continues to hit new highs. Looking really forward to seeing how this goes, especially considering that I think I saw a stat, 80% of its total volume were meme coins. So this is the figure that I'm really looking forward to, especially if meme coins continue to accelerate in the market. Should only be positive for Solana.
Yeah, that meme coin activity certainly come back with force in the past few weeks for Solana there. Just in terms of the other, altcoin and potentially could be an altcoin before too long, strongly hinted there from OpenSea last week. So what used to be the dominant NFT marketplace, has lost its market share and is now sort of just, largely forgotten about in many ways, but they are having a crack at relaunching in a sense like this. They didn't go away, but doing a 2.0 overhaul. So yeah, OpenSea, they got a lot of capital, I suppose. They raised an enormous round in the last NFT bull run. We may see them reward maybe historic NFT trading activity on the OpenSea platform. But yeah, certainly one to look out for. In terms of our outlook on NFTs, I don't think we'll ever hit the mania we saw in COVID with Bored Apes and all of that. But I think our outlook has always been the same, that NFTs will continue to be used, obviously, in many different ways. DeFi, ticketing, like all of those many applications it could be used for. ID, in terms of ID verification. But whether we see that PFP mania remains to be seen. But OpenSea could certainly help accelerate that if their platform, and this is the big if their platform actually turns out to be anything groundbreaking. So something to watch there before we get into a little segment that we like in terms of what to look forward to. There's a certain conference happening in Thailand, Nick.
Yeah, so Ethereum's got their annual DevCon that's going on at the moment. I think it just kicked off the last couple of days and will continue for the next week. So that's one that we'll have a good roundup for you next week once we get, I think, the announcements and everything that was happening in the week in Thailand. So really excited, and it's a huge one for Ethereum considering how much it struggled and a lot of focus on it. Also hit a bit of a landmark, I saw, with its 200th, I think, dev call that they had, which is a really unique part of Ethereum, where the core devs come in and they just talk about the protocol and what's going to be changing and the things they're working on. That hit their 200th edition. So really excited, and I think that's true kind of decentralization at play when you're seeing these things run out on YouTube for everyone to watch.
No, looking forward to seeing what comes out of DevCon for sure. And I think even Solana are doing a consumer day or something, a part of DevCon, which was pretty controversial. But yeah, I'm sure there'll be a lot to go on. In terms of also what to look forward to, we also have what was announced last week from us, actually. So a bit of a self-shill here. We have been working hard on organising Crypto Investor Growth Summit. So an Australian first, sort of just getting everyone together for a day virtually to really just talk about all different areas of crypto without any, importantly, this is the biggest point of difference, is without any sort of incentives or financial incentives. So in other words, we're not taking on any sponsorships. We're not doing any advertising. We're literally just getting all different Australian, founders and other team members from different Australian Australia-based crypto teams and companies. And we're all just sharing different topics. So you can head over to that and definitely encourage you to register. You can see it on my screen here. And for anyone listening, We'll drop the link in the show notes below, but it's our website /summit. So collectiveshift.io/summit. And yeah, you'll be hearing more about that over the next few weeks as we prepare for it on December the 5th. So exciting times there. But now for our other segment that we enjoy doing, Nick, and that is our rapid fire. So underappreciated or overappreciated this week. I'll hand it over to you to kick things off.
Yeah, in my eyes, this week I got underappreciated just because the election noise kind of drowned out a really interesting shareholder letter from Jack Dorsey's Square, which has taken a bit of a Bitcoin-focused approach in a small way, because they've started moving beyond just buying Bitcoin to actually investing in different Bitcoin and crypto infrastructure. One thing that they were working on was their thing dubbed Web 5, which was poking a bit of fun at the Web 3 altcoin movement. They've actually wound down that Web 5 initiative. I think it was called a TBD under a bracket as well. This was really, I think, in the shareholder letter, just because it was pressure, I think, on short-term shareholder interests. Really difficult to make money off public goods, which is like a decentralized ID infrastructure, which was going to be built around Bitcoin. So that's been wound down. Really interested to see if anyone picks up the scraps here and looks to build on it, because I really think, digital ID is such an important primitive that crypto actually blockchain solves in a real meaningful way. That's one that I'm really interested in. And they come out in that shareholder meeting and said that they're going to be focusing and doubling down on its refining investments and its Bitcoin mining initiatives. So for those not aware, Block Inc., they're currently working on a Bitcoin miner that attempts to try and fix some of these centralization problems of being able to basically priced out being a solo miner, not really be able to do that these days. Really keen to see. They've been holding it really tight to their lips at the moment, haven't shared a lot to do with it. I'm expecting next year, maybe we'll see a big announcement from them, and they said that they're going to be doubling down on their Bitcoin wallet as well.
Yeah, we'll see what comes out of Block into 2025. The one that I have and that I teased earlier is I think just a prompt to encourage any members or anyone watching or listening out there, just do a bit of research on the Cantor Fitzgerald CEO, so Howard Lutnick. That's Lutnick. He is leading the transition team for Trump. So Trump's won the election. You need a transition team, and to sort of hand over from the incumbent, which is the Democrats, Howard Lutnick is organizing and in charge of the handover, and he is very close with the Trump team. Why do I mention him? He's just very bullish on Bitcoin. He owns a lot of Bitcoin. Even recently, there was this video that I've got up on my screen here of him just talking about his bullish outlook for Bitcoin. And he's a name, if you're looking into 2025, I think will just become more and more well-known within the crypto space, because I think he is shaping up as one of the key players through helping, I suppose, Trump fulfill his promises on crypto. So, he was there on the election night. He was there in the victory speech up on stage. So a very important player, and behind the scenes sort of is very important in the traditional financial space. So just a name to watch there. So I suppose I'll say underrated for now, and we'll see if we hear more from this gentleman.
That's also a really good one. Also probably underrated. I know me and Matt talked about, this is a bonus one, Polymarket, of course. I feel like we haven't given enough focus maybe on Polymarket, given that it's the big breakthrough crypto app, and really showed that, hey, pollsters are really wrong. It's probably a really outdated methodology, considering even that the big whale that was on Polymarket used his own polling to try to see what the neighbors who would vote for, and that informed his decision making and why he was spending a $40 million bet for Trump to win. So Polymarket, an absolute huge winner from the week.
Yeah, great shout out there, Nick. And look, that was a very enjoyable episode to record. It was, again, as I said at the top, a historic moment for crypto in particular, in terms of the outlook really just flipping on its head US all of a sudden looking like it could be a very powerful player in the crypto space for years to come, which is something I have never said for definitely the past sort of 4 years at least. So, no, exciting times for sure. We'll be back next week. Hopefully a lot more things to discuss, but that is a wrap. So, of course, another prompt, go to the Investor Summit and register for that. So collectiveshift.io/summit. And while you're on the website, subscribe to our newsletter. So that is free, delivered to your inbox every Friday on all things going on in the crypto market. Only the most important stuff. So subscribe to that at collectiveshift.io/newsletter. That's collectiveshift.io/newsletter.